The Imperial Bloodline. You're watching Stories by Maya, where every tale pulls you in, breaks your heart, and stitches it back together with suspense, emotion, and unforgettable twists. If you're new here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories. The moment the sunlight hit the polished marble steps of the Harrington Country Club, Empress Naima Kasanga felt something she hadn't felt in years. A sting. Not fear, not doubt, just that sharp sting of a familiar insult dressed up in polite smiles and clipped English, the kind of sting she thought she'd outgrown decades ago. But racism has a funny way of surviving time, geography, and even wealth. It slithers into any place that believes itself too refined to hold prejudice. Her grandchildren, little Kofi, only 9, and Amma, just 7, stood in front of her, confused, embarrassed, still clutching the melted ice cream cones she had bought them from the street vendor right outside the club's gates. Their small faces were twisted with uncertainty as the towering doorman blocked their way with an outstretched arm. "I'm sorry," he said, with the kind of voice that made it clear he wasn't sorry at all. "But the children need a membership ID or reservation confirmation. This establishment caters to a certain clientele." The implication hung in the air like a foul odor. Naima's son, Kwame, stepped forward, irritation already rising in his chest. "I told you," he said, voice calm but icy. "Our reservation is under Kasanga. We're guests today. Family day pass." But the doorman didn't even look at him. His pale blue eyes remained fixed on the 2 children, their dark skin, their hair braided neatly with beads, their colorful African-patterned shirts that Naima herself had hand-picked for this trip. "They wandered in from the street just now," the doorman replied flatly. "If you're with them, I'll need verification." Naima watched the exchange without a word. She stood behind them, wrapped in a flowing emerald-green dress, embroidered with gold thread, a dress that shimmered like authority itself. Her hair, silver and regal, fell around her shoulders like a crown. She carried herself with the same posture she had held since she was a girl, back straight, chin high, heart unbroken. But right now her heart gave one small twist. Not for herself, but for the way Amma clutched her brother's arm, confused and nearly trembling. Her daughter-in-law, Elena, leaned down to comfort them. "It's okay, babies," she whispered. "It's just a mistake." A mistake. Naima almost laughed at that. Mistakes had a way of repeating themselves every generation, didn't they? Kwame pulled out the reservation confirmation on his phone and held it up. "Here, look. We're guests of the club owner himself, James Harrington. My mother was invited personally." The doorman barely gave it a glance before repeating firmly, "I'll need to verify it inside. You can wait here." The words were polite. The tone was venom. Naima's eyebrow lifted slowly. That small movement alone carried more authority than any crown, but she remained silent a few seconds longer, observing, calculating, measuring. Because Empress Naima Kasanga never reacted immediately. She studied, she remembered, she strategized. And then she delivered justice in a way that always left the offender unsure whether they had been punished or educated. And right now, this man was pouring kerosene on a fire he didn't even know existed. When the manager arrived, young, stiff, blonde hair gelled too perfectly, things somehow managed to get worse. He gave her family the same condescending smile, the one rich people in America perfected when they wanted to talk down to someone while pretending they weren't. "I'm the manager on duty," he said lightly. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion. We can't allow unaccompanied minors onto club premises. You understand?" "I do," Kwame replied tightly. "That's why we're standing right here with them." But the manager's eyes drifted again to the children, then to Naima's long, flowing dress. "Is this a cultural event of some sort?" he asked. Ah, there it was. The sting sharpened. Naima finally stepped forward, her voice calm, warm, and rich, with an accent shaped by decades of African sunsets and palace corridors. "Young man, you are suggesting that my family does not belong here?" The manager smiled in that way people do when they are about to lie. "Oh no, not at all. We just reserve the right to verify all guests to ensure the comfort of our long-standing members. This is a private, premium establishment. You understand." She repeated the phrase back to him, slowly, softly, each syllable dipped in a coldness that made even her son shiver. A private, premium establishment. Behind her calm stare, old memories rippled like shadows on a river. Her father standing tall in a crisp suit on a dusty road, her mother clutching her arm when they were denied entry into a colonial-era hotel, the guard at the palace gates who once refused to believe she was royal because she was too dark to be noble, the teachers who asked if she was in the wrong classroom, the men in suits who assumed she couldn't possibly own the very land they were trying to buy from her family. But her father, the legendary Chief Kasanga, had never bowed his head. He never raised his voice either. He raised his wealth. He raised his standards. He raised his children. And whenever someone tried to make him feel small, he showed them exactly how enormous he truly was. As a little girl, Naima once asked him, "Why do you always dress in the finest clothes? Why do you bring the entire parade of cars everywhere we go?" Her father had smiled and said, "My daughter, when people try to shrink you, you grow louder. Wealth is not our pride. Dignity is. But sometimes, my child, you must decorate your dignity so fools can recognize it." Right now, staring at the club manager, she could hear his voice as clearly as the day he spoke it. She turned slightly toward her family. "Children, stand with your grandmother." Kofi and Amma hurried close, wrapping their small hands around her gown. Naima looked the manager dead in the eyes. "Call your owner, now." The manager blinked, startled. "Mr. Harrington is not available to speak with—" "My dear?" she interrupted softly. "I came here today because your Mr. Harrington has been begging me for 6 months to consider investing in his hotel expansion project. I agreed to meet him while I was in America. He insisted we visit this club. I believe he wanted to impress me." The manager's face changed so quickly it was almost comical. And Naima wasn't done. She reached for her handbag, a custom crocodile leather piece from a designer whose waiting list was reserved only for royalty, oligarchs, and billionaires, and pulled out a small golden card. It shimmered in the sunlight like something magical. She handed it to the manager. He took one look, and his complexion drained. Because engraved on that card, beneath her name, was the seal of the Kasanga dynasty, one of the wealthiest and most powerful royal families in West Africa. And then the realization hit him. The dress, the posture, the confidence, the invitation, the accent, the title printed under her name. He hadn't been speaking to someone above his pay grade. He had been speaking to someone above his entire existence. "Empress Kasanga," he stammered. "My deepest apologies. I didn't recognize—" "You did not need to recognize anything," she said quietly. "You only needed to respect my grandchildren." The doorman swallowed hard. Kwame put an arm protectively around his children, but Naima's calm expression told him not to interfere. She had everything under control. "I assure you this was a misunderstanding," the manager said desperately. "Oh, I have no doubt," Naima replied with a serene smile. "Racism always introduces itself as a misunderstanding." The manager looked like he had been slapped. Before he could respond, a voice boomed from the entrance of the club. "Naima, my dear friend." James Harrington, tall, red-faced, clearly important, hurried down the steps toward her, arms wide open. Apologies. My staff did not know who you were. They certainly didn't mean—" "They meant exactly what they did," she corrected softly. His smile froze. She continued, "But that is not your burden yet. I will carry it until I decide what to do with it." Harrington cleared his throat, sweating now. Well, let us go inside, shall we? Private dining hall? Champagne? Anything you want." "Oh, I know," she answered, and she led her family inside. The manager and doorman shrank behind them. Inside, the club sparkled with wealth. Marble columns, chandeliers dripping with crystal, golf courses rolling like emerald oceans, the kind of place designed to intimidate anyone who didn't belong. Naima didn't just belong, she dominated the space the moment she stepped in. Harrington scrambled to accommodate her, babbling about membership benefits, private villas, investment opportunities, and partnerships. But Naima barely responded, because her mind wasn't on business. Her mind was on revenge, not violent revenge, not loud revenge, not petty revenge, but Kasanga revenge, the kind that educated, corrected, and dismantled arrogance brick by brick. As her father used to say, if you want to humble a man who values his pride, take away what he values. If you want to humble a man who values his wealth, become the wealth he cannot afford to lose. Her lips curved slowly. She knew exactly what she would do. It would be sweet. It would be poetic. It would be unforgettable. And it would begin the moment she reached the private dining room. But that was only the spark. The fire was still growing. The private dining hall of Harrington Country Club was a masterpiece of gold-plated decor, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a breathtaking view of the golf course rolling into the horizon. Elegant guests whispered among themselves, some pretending not to stare, others openly curious about the regal woman entering with an aura so commanding that even silence seemed to bow in her presence. Naima walked with her grandkids beside her, their little hands wrapped in hers like they were the ones leading her instead of the other way around. Kwame and Elena followed behind, the weight of the earlier humiliation still clinging to their expressions. But Naima offered them a single assuring glance, one that said everything without words. Be still. Your mother knows what she's doing. The world has underestimated us before. Let them try again. Harrington guided them to a long table prepared especially for her, complete with imported linens, handcrafted china, and servers standing ready like soldiers awaiting orders. He kept talking in a hurried, almost trembling voice. My staff sometimes, well, they can be too strict with policy, you see. But everything will be arranged immediately. Drinks, appetizers, or perhaps you'd like a full-course meal. I would like your staff, Naima said calmly, seating herself at the head of the table, to stop whispering about us. The room froze. The servers stiffened. Guests looked down at their plates. Harrington's throat produced a small, uncomfortable sound. Of course, he stammered. I will speak to them personally. No need, Naima said, her voice soft but unshakable. They can hear me. The servers stared. Harrington panicked, but Naima didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold. She didn't accuse. She simply continued with the kind of gentle, dangerous tone that no one dared interrupt. Our skin is not a threat. Our clothes are not a costume. Our children are not intruders. If that is too difficult for anyone in this room to understand. She looked around slowly. Then I fear this premium establishment is made of very cheap principles. A ripple went through the room like a silent gasp. Even the waiters lowered their heads, ashamed. Harrington's voice cracked. Of course, Empress. This will never happen again. She didn't answer. She unfolded her napkin with the same grace her mother taught her on the veranda of the Kasanga ancestral home, a slow, precise motion that said she was far from done. Lunch arrived, steaming bowls of creamy soup, plates of roasted vegetables, freshly baked bread, perfect cuts of steak so tender the knife slipped through without effort, and as they ate, she watched her grandchildren slowly regain their smiles. Kofi whispered jokes. Amma giggled at the tiny umbrella in her juice glass. Elena's shoulders relaxed. Even Kwame looked like he was finally letting go of the anger he had been holding since the entrance. Naima savored that moment. But she hadn't forgotten. This wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. After the meal, she asked to tour the club. Harrington agreed so quickly he nearly tripped over himself. She walked through the golf course, the indoor pool, the ballroom, the spa, the reading hall, the private lounges reserved for elite members only. People stared. Some smiled politely. Others stiffened. The club's culture was obvious, polite exclusion wrapped in expensive perfume. But it didn't intimidate her. She had grown up surrounded by ministers, generals, diplomats, royalty. These were just rich Americans with big wallets and small minds. Then she saw it. A display wall filled with portraits of past presidents and top donors of the club. Wealthy families, white and polished, generations of privilege framed in gold. That's when an idea sparked in her mind. It was so sharp, so brilliant, so fitting that she almost laughed out loud. "Mr. Harrington," she said, stopping before the portrait wall, "I believe you wished for my investment in your new luxury resort partnership." "Oh, yes," he said eagerly, nearly bursting with relief that the conversation had turned to business. "Absolutely. I was hoping we could finalize something today. With your backing, Empress, we could—" She held up a hand. He stopped mid-sentence. "What percentage ownership were you offering me?" 20%, he said quickly. "But I am willing to negotiate. Perhaps 30, even 35. Naima turned fully toward him. "Make it 55. 55. Harrington blinked so hard it looked painful. 55%? That gives you majority ownership." "Yes," Naima answered with a serene smile. "It does." He swallowed, stunned. "That would change everything. I mean, that would give you control over all future business decisions, voting rights, branding, and full authority to restructure your club's management," she finished for him. His eyes widened. She let that sink in slowly, purposefully. "I will invest," she said softly, "on the condition that your board approves a full cultural, racial, and ethical sensitivity overhaul. Brand new hiring criteria, mandatory anti-discrimination training, a diverse advisory council, and a complete review of every complaint filed in the last 5 years regarding membership discrimination." Harrington stared like she had spoken in another language. I don't know if the board—" "They'll agree," she said gently. "How do you know?" he whispered. "Because," Naima replied, "I will be the majority shareholder. And I will tell them." He swayed a little, hands trembling. "You want to own the club?" She gestured elegantly around her. "Let us say I wish to elevate its standards." He was still processing when she leaned in just a little closer. "And one more thing, Mr. Harrington." Yes?" "Every staff member who attempted to turn my grandchildren away," her voice softened with a dangerous kindness, "will either undergo complete retraining or will be replaced with individuals who understand human decency." The room seemed to lose oxygen for a moment. Harrington nodded quickly. "Of course, absolutely, immediately." "And the manager?" she added with delicate rhythm. He went pale. "Of course, I understand." Naima didn't smile. She had no reason to. This wasn't joy, this was justice, and justice was not meant to be pleasant. She resumed walking, giving him a moment to breathe. Her grandchildren skipped ahead on the path, chasing each other's shadows. Watching them, her heart softened again. She remembered the days she and her brother used to run through the courtyards of her childhood palace. She remembered guards offering them candies, her father chuckling as he watched them play, her mother reminding them that their lineage was not just wealth, it was responsibility. "Never let anyone teach you to be small," her mother used to say. "Your ancestors died to make you big." As they neared the end of the tour, they reached a private lounge where a group of wealthy members sat sipping wine. Most ignored them. One elderly white woman stared openly, her eyes narrowing the moment she saw the children. She whispered something to her friend. Her friend snickered. 2 men looked up with smirks. Naima watched the whole thing, her face calm as still water. That's when Amma tugged her dress. "Grandma," the little girl whispered innocently, "why do they look at us like we're not supposed to be here?" Naima knelt slowly so she was eye level with her granddaughter. "Because they don't know who you are," she said softly. "They don't know your history, your power, or your worth. And when people don't understand something, sometimes they fear it." Amma frowned. But we're just here to play. I know, my love. She gently cupped Amma's cheek. That is why we walk in anyway. Amma smiled, but Naima saw the tiny hurt behind it, and Naima made herself a silent vow. By the time she was done, no child, hers or anyone else's, would ever feel small in this place again. When they returned to the main lobby, the doorman who had insulted the children earlier stood stiffly at attention, terror painted across his face. His hat was crooked from how often he had taken it off and put it back on. He bowed awkwardly. Empress, I sincerely apologize for my behavior. Naima looked him up and down with the same steady gaze her father used when deciding whether someone deserved mercy. What is your name? She asked calmly. Travis, ma'am. Travis, she repeated. Do you have children? Yes, ma'am, he whispered. A daughter. She's 6. A softness flickered in her eyes, brief but real. Then remember this. Every child you encounter is someone else's entire universe. The pain you caused my grandchildren today. She paused. You would not want another man causing that to your little girl. His head trembled as he nodded, eyes watering. No, ma'am. Never. I'm so sorry. For a moment, Naima considered all the ways she could crush him, but then she heard her father's voice in her mind again. Justice is not revenge, my daughter. Revenge satisfies you. Justice changes the world. She inhaled gently. You will not lose your job, she said finally. Travis let out a strangled breath of relief. But, she continued, you will undergo training, and you will spend the next month volunteering at a children's community center, preferably in a neighborhood you have never stepped foot in. He nodded quickly, his gratitude pouring from him like water breaking through a dam. Yes, ma'am. I'll do anything. Thank you. Thank you so much. As she walked past him, Kofi whispered to his sister, Grandma saved him. Amma whispered back, because she's nice. Naima almost smiled. Not nice, little one. Just fair. Outside, the sunlight was gentle, the breeze warm. As they stood at the club entrance preparing to leave for the day, Harrington approached her once more. Empress Kasanga, he said quietly. My board will have the papers ready by tomorrow morning. She nodded. I expect nothing less. And, will you really take 55% ownership? Yes, she answered simply. And in 6 months, I will make this club a place my grandchildren, and children like them, will walk into without fear of rejection. Harrington swallowed. Thank you. I truly am sorry. I am not interested in apologies, she said, stepping past him. I am interested in change. She walked toward the limousine waiting at the curb, grandchildren skipping ahead, family behind her. And as the doors opened, she took one last lingering look at the club. This place had tried to belittle her bloodline. Now her bloodline would own it. She lifted her chin with quiet pride as she stepped into the car, because this was only the beginning. The reign of the Empress had not just arrived in America, it was about to reshape it. In the days that followed, the Harrington Country Club unknowingly became the center of a quiet, unstoppable storm. A storm wrapped in silk, dignity, and the unstoppable will of an empress. Naima did not rest. She did not delay. Her father had raised her with one unbreakable rule. When you are wronged, respond with such brilliance that the world remembers your answer long after it forgets their ignorance. So the very next morning, she sat at the long mahogany table in her penthouse suite and reviewed every document the Harrington board sent her: contract drafts, ownership charts, profit forecasts, member demographic reports. Her red pen circled clauses like a sword, carving through arrogance. Kwame walked in mid-morning with coffee. He paused when he saw the papers spread across the table, the change she was already orchestrating before her ownership was even official. You're already working? He asked. I started hours ago, she replied without looking up. If one waits for the perfect moment, one waits forever. Kwame smiled. You're unstoppable, Mama. She paused for a moment, studying her grown son. The boy she had raised through palace hallways and private tutors and the weight of legacy. "You were almost broken yesterday," she said gently. "That cannot happen again." Kwame looked down. It just hurt, seeing my children treated that way, and for a moment I felt like I was 10 years old again, standing outside my boarding school when the guard refused to believe I belonged. She pressed her hand on his. "You belong everywhere you choose to walk." He swallowed hard, nodding. Outside the penthouse windows, New York hummed with its usual chaos, but inside, there was only resolve. By late afternoon, Naima sent back a revised version of the ownership contract, firmer, fairer, and undeniably hers. Harrington signed it without protest. The board, terrified of losing her investment, voted unanimously. And just like that, with one signature, the Empress became the majority owner of the most exclusive club in the state. But ownership alone wasn't enough. Naima wanted transformation. The next week began with an all-staff meeting at the country club. Every employee, managers, caddies, servers, receptionists, lifeguards, lined the ballroom, whispering nervously. A few members attended as well, curious and uneasy. No one knew what to expect. But the moment Naima stepped onto the stage, silence cloaked the room like a heavy curtain. She did not speak with anger. She did not speak with accusation. She spoke with truth. "This establishment," she began softly, "is beautiful, but beauty means nothing if the heart beneath it is ugly." Eyes lowered, throats tightened. Harrington himself looked like he might faint. "I am not here to punish anyone," she continued. "I am here to raise the standard. A club that rejects children for the color of their skin is not a premium establishment. A club that humiliates families because they do not look wealthy is not refined. A club that believes luxury belongs to one kind of person is not luxurious at all." A hush fell so deep it felt like the walls were listening. From this day forward, diversity is not a suggestion. It is a requirement. Respect is not optional. It is mandatory. Every staff member will undergo training. Every complaint will be reviewed. Every barrier built to keep certain families out will be dismantled. Many in the room looked ashamed. A few looked resentful. Some looked relieved. Then she added something they did not expect. "And if you are worried you cannot meet these new expectations, do not worry." Someone exhaled in relief. Then she finished. "You are free to leave." A ripple of shock coursed through the ballroom. But Naima did not waver. She spoke like the royalty she was, calm, firm, unshaken. The doorman, Travis, stepped forward. "Empress, I want to do better. I'm not leaving." "I know," she replied. "You will." He wiped his eyes. Others followed, some apologizing, some expressing nervous commitment, some staying silent but resolute. The transformation began that very day. Within 2 weeks, the club started to look different. The staff was more diverse. New families entered the lounge without being stared at like museum exhibits. The atmosphere gradually shifted from exclusive in the wrong way to exclusive in the right way, a place where kindness, class, and culture blended with true elegance. Even members who initially resisted the changes slowly recognized the value. There was an undeniable warmth now, a richness of humanity that money alone could not buy. Meanwhile, in the background, Naima continued to observe everything. She visited during peak hours, watching how staff acted when they thought she wasn't paying attention. She spoke to families who hesitated to join, encouraging them. She held small tea sessions with longtime members, winning them over with her charm and intelligence. Slowly, quietly, she became the soul of the club. One afternoon, as she walked through the club gardens, she overheard 2 older members speaking. This time, they weren't whispering insults. "I didn't think we needed all this change," one man admitted. "But look around. The place feels alive." The woman beside him sighed. "Makes you realize how blind we were." Naima smiled inwardly. Sometimes people needed to be guided, not condemned. And then came the day that would tie every thread of her story together. A month after taking ownership, she decided to host a grand gala, a charity fundraiser benefiting underprivileged African schools and American urban youth programs. The theme was Unity Through Legacy. She invited dignitaries, wealthy families, artists, educators, and the very children the club once would have rejected. The ballroom shimmered with gold and ivory decor. African drummers welcomed guests at the entrance. A jazz band played elegantly inside. Traditional fabrics blended beautifully with luxury gowns. It was a night where cultures intertwined like music dancing on air. Kwame and Elena welcomed guests at the doors. Kofi and Amma wore miniature royal outfits resembling those worn by Naima's ancestors. They ran around the ballroom with innocent joy, unafraid, unashamed, unbothered. This was what Naima had fought for. Near the end of the evening, Harrington approached her with gratitude written all over him. "You've changed everything," he whispered. "Not just the club, me, my staff, the members. I didn't realize how much was broken until you fixed it." She looked at him thoughtfully. "People rarely see cracks when they are standing on marble." He nodded, humbled beyond measure. As the gala winded down, a soft hush spread through the ballroom. People turned toward the stage, where Harrington stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we gather tonight not only to support a wonderful cause, but to honor the woman whose vision transformed this entire institution. Please welcome Empress Naima Kasanga." The applause rose instantly, rich and heartfelt. Naima stepped onto the stage, dressed in a deep purple gown lined with gold. She didn't need a crown. She carried royalty in the tilt of her chin. She spoke to the audience with the steadiness of a woman who had carried decades of scars and turned them into armor. "When I arrived at this club," she said softly, "my grandchildren were turned away. Not because of behavior, not because of rules, not because of policies." She paused. "But because people assumed our worth by our skin." Many heads lowered. "Tonight, I look around this room and I see what this place should have been all along, a home for every family with dignity, respect, and heart." Applause built once more, this time stronger. She looked at her grandkids seated at a table in front, eyes wide with admiration. "Kofi, Amma." Her voice softened. "You must remember something. The world will try to tell you who you are, but it only succeeds if you forget who you come from." Amma smiled and held her brother's hand. Naima continued, "My father taught me that pride without kindness is arrogance, and kindness without pride becomes weakness. So walk with both. Show the world your value, and when someone tries to dim your light," she smiled, "warm, regal, unbreakable, shine brighter." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. It wasn't for the wealth, it wasn't for the title, it wasn't for the spectacle, it was for the truth she carried, and the change she created. Later that night, as the gala ended and families departed, Naima walked outside into the cool evening breeze. The club, now glowing with lanterns, looked completely different from the day she first stepped in. It wasn't the marble that changed. It wasn't the chandeliers. It was the spirit. Kwame came up beside her. "Mama, you did it." She took a long breath, her eyes softening. "No," she said gently. "We did it." Her grandkids ran up to her, throwing their arms around her legs. "Grandma! Grandma! Did you see us? Everyone liked our clothes." She laughed, an elegant sound that echoed like peace. "Of course they did. You are royalty." Elena hugged her next, whispering, "Thank you for giving them a world that sees them." Naima looked at her family, her legacy, standing beneath the golden lights. And in that moment, she felt something settle deep in her heart. Wholeness, pride, fulfillment. She had not simply gotten revenge, she had changed a world. Small, yes, but meaningful. She had protected her lineage. She had honored her father's teachings. She had melted ignorance with dignity. She had won. They returned to the limousine, and as the driver opened the door, Naima took one last look at the club, her club, alive with new purpose. The Empress of Kasanga had arrived in America, but now she belonged in its history. She stepped into the limousine with her family, her heart full, her soul light, her legacy sealed. And as the car pulled away under the starlit sky, Amma whispered sleepily into her grandmother's arms. "Grandma, you made the world kinder." Naima kissed her forehead. "No, my love, we did." The limousine drove on into the night, leaving behind a glow. Not from lights, not from wealth, but from impact. A story of heritage, a story of dignity, a story of sweet revenge and even sweeter healing. And it ended exactly as it should, with love, with triumph, with family. You've been listening to Stories by Maya, where every tale carries heart, suspense, emotion, and unforgettable twists. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories.